for all kinds of ships. Electricity imports, particularly for ferries, and there are quite a lot of ferries operating within Africa. These are the type of ferries that could be the type of ships that could be electrified. Another example, and we're seeing really good actually progress in this, is the development of biofuels for the shipping industry. Algae present in the sea, seaweed, can be used already today in order to develop biofuels to be used by the shipping industry. So as was said at the beginning of this morning, like doing nothing is not an option anymore when it comes to decarbonization of the shipping industry. Next slide, please. Thank you. But we're having a problem. And the problem is here in the middle of the slide. The slide is the level of ratification of MARPOL Annex 6 around the world. The orange ones being the countries that have ratified MARPOL Annex 6, which is IMO's main regulation defining and driving carbon climate action. So you have a task here, and that's what we're going to talk about. Who's going to ratify MARPOL Annex 6 and when? And as the Secretary General said, this is becoming increasingly important because the IMO is negotiating, you are negotiating in London right now the next set of climate measures, a global fuel standard and a carbon pricing mechanism. These negotiations are going on as we speak. New amendments to MARPOL Annex 6 will have to be adopted in autumn next year. That is again what you as member states agreed upon last year. So draft legal text is already prepared. Negotiations will continue in the next meetings of the Intersessional Working Group on Greenhouse Gases and MEPC. MEPC will meet again in April, and I hope to see many of you there. But if you don't ratify MARPOL Annex 6, you may experience a problem in the future when it comes to the distribution of any financial revenue generated under a global carbon pricing mechanism that the IMO is developing. Just saying. Food security, very important. During the last meeting of MEPC, we had a discussion about the impact assessment. So what are the potential impacts on states in terms of GDP from the IMO's climate measures, from an increase in maritime transport costs? And we know that the climate measures will come with a cost. Fighting climate change comes with a cost. So during the last meeting, can you go back? Sorry. During the last meeting, you asked for an additional analysis about the impacts on food security resulting from an increase in maritime transport cost. And this is what we're now engaged in. And we met recently, the Secretary General met with the Executive Secretary of the UN ECA, the Economic Commission for Africa. He has met with the FAO to discuss what are the potential impacts of IMO's climate measures on food security. So we're taking this very seriously, and we will present the results of this exercise to the next MEPC. Next slide, please. The Secretary General also mentioned it this morning, safety and the well-being of seafarers. We cannot decarbonize the industry without safety first and the well-being of seafarers. And there's a lot of work going on within the IMO on also preparing the regulatory framework to ensure the safe handling of the future fuels and to make sure that the seafarers are capable of handling these fuels in a safe way. Our Maritime Safety Committee will start on Monday in 3 days and will discuss the safety framework to be included in SOLAS. There's work ongoing on the so-called life cycle well-to-wake emission calculations of all the different fuels that are being looked at: hydrogen, ammonia, biofuels, LNG. And we need Africa's input in there. We have initiated an expert group looking into life cycle emissions, but there we need additional expertise from Africa to deal and give us your input on how we need to regulate these fuels. Next slide, please. There are opportunities in the energy transition. Again, we heard it this morning. Shipping cannot decarbonize by itself. Decarbonization of shipping also creates opportunities. Today, oil, gas is shipped around the world in tankers. But as we are seeing that the world is going through an energy transition, these tankers in the future will have to ship renewable hydrogen, renewable ammonia from the production places in the world to the large demand centers in the world. And those production places are likely to be in Africa. So there are opportunities, and this is where IMO can help you. National action plans for the decarbonization of shipping is an area where we provide concrete results to member states. And it's really something that it can help you as a shipping industry to speak with other actors, with the energy sector, the renewable fuel producers, and many of the countries present here in the room today. You have a good track record in renewable energy production. So how can you make sure that the production is linked with the shipping and that the ships themselves also decarbonize? The banks, and I know that we have some banks here in the room, so there is also a task through national cooperation, outreach with other sectors to put shipping on the forefront of everybody's minds. Next slide, please. And there are options. There are opportunities for you to be involved in. Maritime green corridors being one of those strategic cooperation initiatives where you connect two ports, fuel production hubs with large demand centers. And this is, I think, where Africa can come in and IMO can support you with that. Next slide, please. Just an equitable transition. It's a key element in the strategy. We need to decarbonize, we need to achieve net zero emissions, but we also need to support a just and equitable transition. From the IMO perspective, this is key. And we're already doing this by increasing inclusiveness in our process. So last year, we established a multi-donor trust fund that funds the participation of developing countries to come to London and to be part of the negotiations in person. And I know many of you have already made use of this trust fund. Sorry, can you go back? Hybrid meetings. The hybrid meeting mode has now become the standard meeting mode for all greenhouse gas negotiations, allowing all of you to participate even when you cannot come to London. Informed decision making. The impact assessment was extremely important to assess what possible impacts there can be of climate measures. But we also launched a particular project site, the IMO Future Fuels and Technologies website, which is free of charge and where you can access all latest decarbonization information. And then, of course, capacity building and technology cooperation. We have a long track record of providing technical assistance projects. The MTCC Africa, and Lydia is here on the panel, she will tell you what can be done more, but you also need to tell Lydia what you want to be done. Next slide, please. So this is just very quickly the website that is available, Future Fuels and Technologies. It has been developed to allow everyone, all the delegates, all the IMO delegates coming to London to have access to information about what kind of fuel prices are now being set around the world for biofuels, for ammonia, for methanol, what kind of technologies will be available in the future. Next slide, please. So I really invite you to have a look at this website in order to get the information. And we work with quite a lot of partners, including DNV, to get this information to you free of charge. So make use of it in the negotiations. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of all the different projects, the IMO projects, which are already in place and where many of you are already participating in. We are keen on providing the best assistance that we can. And that means that you have to tell us what kind of your demands are and where exactly are the gaps and challenges so that we can design the technical assistance to be fit for purpose. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll come to the end of my presentation, and that is actually an invitation to the panel or to AMA members. You heard it before. The idea of this AMA conference is not just to have PowerPoints like mine, listening, but to define actions. So it's up to you now, panelists, to come up with actions, AMA actions, and to define a roadmap for decarbonization. And what we would like to see from the Secretariat side in such a roadmap is, how are you going to have more ratifications of MARPO Annex 6? Which countries are going to initiate the development of a national action plan to decarbonize shipping? How many more pilot demonstrations is the MTCC Africa going to undertake? Finance needs, but also seafarer training. It's up to you to determine that. And we will have another workshop taking place in Mombasa in Kenya in February. And I'm looking here at my Kenyan colleagues who will be hosting a 2-day workshop in Kenya in February, where we will talk about decarbonization of the shipping industry for 2 days, but it will be focused on concrete action. So with that, Mr. Moderator, back to you, and I hope to see a lot of action coming out. Thank you.
Let's thank Mr. Honda for this presentation. I thought it would be good that he sits right there. He needs not escape because I see so many questions that you people may have. Please take your seat. Now we have the panelists, Mr. Julius Koch, the Acting Director General of the Kenya Maritime Authority, should have been here, but unfortunately he cannot, so he's being replaced by Ms. Catherine Kehaki, who is the Assistant Director for Maritime Governance and Compliance. Mr. Kehaki, please. And also we're lucky to have the African Shipowners Association, a representative is also here who is now stepping in for his president, Captain Ladi Obu Boale. Can you please come up to do your presentation, please? He will be presenting to us on the topic, decarbonization, ecological transition, and the African Maritime Alliance. Mr. Obu Boale, please.
Thank you all, and good day. A big greetings from the Secretary General of African Shipowners Association. Today, I'll be presenting. Please, can I have the slides, please? Okay, I'll go ahead before the slides comes up. I would like to appreciate the opportunity for inviting African Shipowners Association to be part of the solution, for us to be able to come and participate as well. And greetings to everybody, and we stand on the existing protocol as well.
IT folks, can we have the presentation on the screen, please? So what we have there is just fast listing.
While they're trying to load your presentation, I want to have a short intervention on the Slido.
All right, while they're trying to get the presentation, we have the Deputy Director for the Technical Cooperation Division of the International Maritime Organization, Mr. Vincent Job, to do a short intervention, please.
Thank you very much. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, throughout this conference, we want to measure our engagements. So we'll be using a digital tool to do that. You will see on the screen a projection. You will see a QR code. You can use your mobile phone to scan the QR code, and you will be logged on to an application. You don't need to download anything. It's through a web browser. Now, through this QR code, or using basically going to www.slido.com and putting the passcode you have in there, you can use either of the two. You'll be able to follow what we are doing. You'll be able to respond to questions. And at the end of the session, you can also do Q&A through it. That's if you don't want to take the microphone. Thank you. So kindly scan the QR code from your mobile phone, and let's see how we are doing. Either you scan the QR code. Oh, yes. I can see progress, yeah? Or you can simply put slido.com and put in the password. We will use this tool to gain, for engagement purposes. And you're going to find it very, very interesting. Thank you. Fantastic. Great. During presentations, it will be off the screen, but you can still continue to use it in the margins of the presentations. And from time to time, we'll be beaming the outcome on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Job. In the meantime, Captain Obuale will go ahead with the presentation while IT people are trying to locate the presentation, please.
Okay. We want to discuss about the carbonization in contents of the African ship owner. Before going ahead, we have to look at who are we, African ship owners. What's our intention? What do we plan to do? We plan, as an African ship owner, we plan to operate ships that are being flagged by African flags, and also we want to operate ships that are being flagged by an African flag, registered and being flagged by an African flag, and also we want to operate ships that are actually green in nation as well. With all members of the association that produce maritime administrators, we want to ensure that African fleets actually be part of the solution in the maritime trade and the global trade as well. So in terms of that, we're looking at decarbonization differently in African contexts as well. So what are the challenges we face in terms of that? Replacement of the existing fleet, in which we all contents we know. What's the percentage of African tonnage? Less than 1%. 50% is for China, Korea, and the other states, while Europe at 38%, and the rest is Europe as well. So looking at that tonnage of Africa, we have a lot to do when it comes to the cannibalization of our fleet as well. So replacement, and also there's a knowledge gap within our system. There's a short time in terms of which we must be filled. Knowledge economy is key to us in actually meeting up the cannibalization in the contents of African ship owners as well. Also, the compliance level and the levies on which is affecting the economy as well. Those are the key challenges we face. And also the mighty one, the fund. Fund is key to any implementation of any activities. For Africa as a whole, our outlook towards decolonization is, considering our tonnage, we are geared towards going for the green ship, in which that will be the next generation of where we are heading to. What are our solutions? To be inclusive, we want to participate in IMO resolution, the GHE negotiation. We want to be part of that, to speak our own language, to speak our own stories as well, because most things have to be domiciled and localized to African content in doing that as well. Also, policy architecture, supporting Africa's need. The needs of Africa is different compared to the rest of the world. We need to actually identify and narrow and modify and tailor our own need to African content as well. capacity building through partnership. We need to forge the SDG 17 to look at how do you forge partnership to attain this as well. And this is key for us. A strategy for framework for Africa needs to be developed as well. We need to be part of where things are being decided or deliberated as well as an African forum. So this is where we come in, an African Ship Owner Association of Africa, to be able to be partake in our own stories as well. So going down, lastly, I want to say this. The African Maritime Alliance is African Ship Owner Strategy. Gradually, we want to form that partnership. We want to come together as one to actually speak one language and one solution for an African trade, African shipping. From there, we can strategize and modify what strategy we want to use in terms of decarbonization as well in all. I thank you all for this as well, and I bring greetings for the Secretary General, African Ship Owner Association. Thank you so much.
Captain, you can just take the seat right there. So we thank Captain Obuwale for that presentation at a very short notice, you can imagine. I also thank Mr. Hondas for his presentation. The task to us as member states are very clear. We need to be actively involved in the discussions to develop and implement the IMO's important climate regulations. Also, the panelists we have here, they need to tell us what the next step our continent needs to take to ensure that we have actionable action plans. And I would like to invite my panelists now to come and intervene with some specific questions, but you have to be very brief and short. You can comment on the interventions you hear from your colleague, and most importantly, we need some output on an AMAD net zero roadmap, identifying follow-up actions. With that, we will start with our colleague from the Kenya Maritime Authority, Catherine. Catherine, you heard what we want to know: how can Africa position itself better in the ongoing regulatory discussions in IMO? And how can the IMO measures foster the energy transition in shipping and support a low-carbon economy in Africa? Most importantly, how could concretely AMA help this process? Catherine, please. Can you help us with the microphone? She's not on. No. IT folks, the mics. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. And I will attempt to respond as best way as possible, taking into account where we are as a continent. You will recall that earlier on there was a presentation in terms of, it was actually a slide that was shown in terms of how many countries have ratified or acceded to MARPOL Annex 6. And we were apprised that MARPOL Annex 6 actually carries the heavy burden in terms of international shipping, trying to take steps as well as member states to address decarbonization in international shipping. So it is very important as the first step that AMA is able to move the continent towards ensuring that we are able to all substantively understand the provisions of MARPOL Annex 6 and what it provides, and subsequently present a justifiable position before our cabinet or parliament in terms of the benefits in relation to ratifying or acceding MARPOL Annex 6, and subsequently developing a framework in that respect. In addition, there is also need to go back and look at our national maritime transport policies or national integrated maritime transport policies. Depending on when they were developed, there may be urgent need to consider reviewing our policies to take on board the revised position in terms of decarbonization. We had earlier on, through the remarks of the ministry, that Tanzania has taken steps towards reviewing their strategy so that they are able, the policy, so that they're able to embrace and implement or have directives geared towards addressing, among other things, matters relating to decarbonization. Kenya has also taken that similar step. We have, in the past, we had an integrated national transport policy, 2009. We now have the National Maritime Transport Policy, which is integrated mechanism, and it also addresses aspects in relation to climate change, and as such also has specific directives that are geared towards strategies and measures that address decarbonization in terms of international shipping. You will also recall that during the presentation that was made earlier on by the IMO representative, that we were informed that there is a lot of initiatives that have been proposed that are being determined or negotiated. And some of these proposals will probably assist us towards being able to meet the requirements in terms of addressing the decarbonization situation within our respective regions. I would urge you, one of the proposals that was made during the development of the revised strategy, there was a comprehensive impact assessment report that was developed that provides information in terms of how best what steps we need to take to be able to implement these strategies. And it is important that we familiarize ourselves, even in our own home countries, with this assessment. And as we review our strategy or review our policy, which now from the policy level, that is now when we are able to derive the action directives or policy directives which guides on the national action plan or the implementation metrics. So when we are considering what steps that need to be taken towards moving or addressing decarbonization in international shipping, we are also preparing ourselves in terms of the value supply chain services within our port areas to ensure that we do have the facilities available and that we do have the mechanisms to be able to receive these vessels that have transitioned in terms of energy, as well as we are able to develop or produce and supply some of these energy resources, renewable energy resources, within our respective regions. If we are able to move in this similar direction, we believe that it will provide opportunities for job creation. We will have operators performing or providing services within our ports to be able to deliver these services. In addition, there is also the initiative being undertaken, I believe, with the support of PAMAESA in terms of a green port policy. This also goes hand in hand with the principles in terms of a move towards decarbonization of our ports. So we need to look at these policies if they're available within our framework, and alternatively, if not, we consider developing such policies to be able to provide directives towards implementation of the strategy. We've been informed that they have progressed. We have already progressed substantively in terms of the deliberations, the negotiations, in terms of the legal framework for decarbonization. And I believe it is important for all of us in this room, noting that there is an opportunity to also participate using the hybrid system, that we familiarize ourselves with some of, and we're able to put ourselves in a position that we are able to benefit from these proposals which are being negotiated. This will also assist us consider measures or look into aspects relating to incentives that are available for purposes of undertaking research and development in these areas. Also, we will also consider...
Thank you, Catherine. We are pressed for time, so we said we need to be as brief. We hope we have all the time in the world where you could benefit from this vast knowledge. But now we'd like to turn our attention to Egypt. Director Mosi, we'd like to look at the issue of food security. You may recall that the IMO MEPC, they already have for consideration the issue of food security among the midterm measures. So what I'd like to know is what could be done to mitigate negative impacts of the measures on food security, one. Would there also be an opportunity for Africa in proactively addressing this impact? And of course, please add what you think AMA can do in this direction. You may want to comment on your colleagues' intervention as well. But bear in mind time, please. We don't have much time, so go straight to the...
No comment.
Thank you.
Actually, she covers the whole decarbonization activities. And I just want to thank you, Mr. Harry. When we talk about food security, it's important to recall the FAO report on 2023 that mentioned that Africa is increasing significantly in the hunger by 2030. And this is actually, we call food security as a critical issue that every country and every nation in Africa has to look at it in all the aspects. When it gets to the food security, the negative impacts for any extra factors that might increase the cost and the price of the food will have a sharp negative and direct influence on the people itself. That's why Egypt has submitted a document in the last MAPC 82 to ask for a request for further assessments and study in regard of this issue, especially for the net food importers developing countries. There must be some way to balance the economies of these countries that's already in a very bad condition with the imperatives that comes with DHG new measures. Egypt, we do have a lot of steps in regard of DHG reducing the emission reduction, along with the renewable projects, try to do investments in this particular areas, and we're planning and do the strategy plans for the climate change strategies, sustainable development strategies, even the hydrogen, new fuel, green hydrogen strategies, and all that needs more investments and need more financial issues, and this is a point that's we'll need to join other bodies, African bodies, other African entities to get involved beside AMAS, because this is not, this portfolio is not a maritime portfolio only. It should share the energy, the environment, and other entities to get involved with this also. So when you get to the policies or the steps that need to be taken to make sure that this food security overcome. It needs for us, for African nations, to identify its requirements and exactly knows what are these materials or merchandise that need to be subject to discussion later in the MMPCs. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mosi. Can we turn to Ghana? Mr. Boapen, you are quite aware of the ongoing discussions at the IMO. Is there any specific views from Ghana on the ongoing GHG discussion at the IMO? And how could AMA be more active in that regard? And another thing you may want to look at is the issue of creating opportunities. Ghana is quite active in exploring opportunities in the energy transition. How could the IMO midterm measures support this? What cooperation is needed with international partners? Of course, what can AMA do?
Thank you, moderator, and thank you to our host for the warm hospitality. Yes, we are aware of the current negotiations at the IMO, and we are hopeful that we'll meet the targets that we set ourselves. Come MEPC 83, we should have agreed on the way forward, particularly regarding the market-based measures. Ghana as a country sees the need to adopt the proper regulatory framework to incentivize both the owners, and then those of us who make use of the trade. It is inevitable that it is going to come at a cost. And how do we mitigate some of these costs? Because you go to the IMO and then you hear that some people are fighting towards existential threats, but we also have economic threats whereby the least impact on the freight has a ripple effect on our economy. And so for Ghana, we go to those negotiations hoping to put out these issues, how to mitigate some of the economic impacts that would come with the adoption of the decarbonization measures. And then going to AMA, there is a lot for AMA to do when it comes to the decarbonization. You cannot expect to have a solution when you haven't tabled your issues. And if you look at the authorial intent of the AIMS 2050, AMA was supposed to coordinate the views of Africa at such forums so that we have a uniform transport policy. And so it is incumbent on on AMA to be proactive and coordinate the joint positions for the whole continent, because bear in mind, we cannot do this on a country basis, and so we need to approach it from the continental level. And so AMA, which is a creation of the AU, should do more in terms of coordinating the efforts of Africa. When it comes to the opportunities, we are seeing opportunities because we see there's going to be a level playing field, and it's the dawn of a new era. And so there are a lot of places where you can seek to take opportunities from. For Ghana, we are looking at the low-hanging fruits. We've seen the human element where we have some bit of competitive advantage, where we have quite a number of sailors. We have also noted that the population in our country is largely the youthful population, and is coupled with the unemployment ratios. And so taking the admonition of the IMO, during the 2010 Manila discussions, we've embarked on a Go to Sea campaign to introduce seafaring as a career of choice for high school students, because we note that with the coming into force of these new fuels, the seafaring aspects is going to change, coupled with digitalization, whereby the youth now want a career that is engaging. So we are looking at it from that perspective. When it comes to the fuels and the technology, we have taken note of, we have made an application to the IMO to enroll in the Green Voyage 2050, and we have just received approval from the IMO to submit a commitment letter to participate in the Green Voyage 2050, where we are going to develop our national action plan for the maritime decarbonization. Aside from that, we have also engaged a Maersk McKinney Moller Center to conduct a pre-feasibility study on green corridors, and this, through AMA, we can turn it into a regional-wide approach so that they see the whole chain, because you see that in a part of the world is transshipment. When a vessel comes, it does not come to only one place. It mostly moves around and along the coast. So it's something that we need to look at and work on, and that is where AMA comes in. And so there's a lot for AMA to do to ensure that Africa goes along with the decarbonization agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boaben. Now we turn to Lydia from NTCC Africa. Lydia, as you are quite aware, the MTCC supports the IMO energy efficiency regulations and technology. So what we'd like to know is, how can MTCC assist African countries with implementation of IMO legislation and energy efficiency technology, one. Of course, what can AMA do to further support the developments and the transposition of IMO's regulation into national laws and into regional and national strategic framework? Later, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Harry. And I'll build up on what Roel had presented, as well as Catherine and all the other panelists in this session. And before I start, I'll just give an overview of what is MTCC Africa. So MTCC Africa stands for the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center for Africa. We are based in Kenya, and it is one of the 5 centers that was set up by the International Maritime Organization to build capacity for climate change in the shipping and maritime industry. So this obviously ties into the MAPOL Annex 6, as well as the initial IMO GHG strategy. How do we support the African continent? So at MTCC Africa, this is where the action takes place. We have the regulations, and we also have the legislation that is transposed through ratification and domestication from the member states. And I'm happy to see that in the crowd we have an ample number of the member states that we work closely with, in addition to the member states that we support at the MTCC Africa. How we put this into action in support of decarbonization is to ensure that we have practical pilot projects that enable to show the ports are having energy efficiency mitigation measures. And this builds up from what is brought forward by the maritime administrations in terms of the national action plans. In the national action plans, it is key to also have in mind, which definitely it is considered when the national action plans are being formulated, to have in mind the layout of the IMO GHG strategy. So this brings about the innovation aspect. It's very important for us to note that going forward, the world is changing. We have the United Nations Development Goals that we are keen to support at MTCC, as well as ensure that the environment aspect is considered. Therefore, technology innovation is key. And even as we have the technology innovation, when we are looking at it from a decarbonization perspective, we look at country-specific projects that will lead forward to have the mitigation considered. This is quantifiable mitigation, because with the pilot project, baselines are calculated, and we are able to see that some of the gaps that can be brought forward and can be mitigated for proper implementation. In addition to that, we have country-specific projects that meet the actual national need of the country. So the actual national need of the country is derived from the legislation, which is MAPOL Annex 6, as well as the IMO GHG strategy. And when the country identifies the gap, then MTCC, together with its technical officers and working together with the technical officers in the region, we are able to have projects that will support the country. For example, we are having a project that is closely related to waste to energy management, and where waste to energy in the sense that there will be energy generated from waste that is at the port, and this will also complement some of the lightings at the port, because in a very technical and definitely scientific way, the waste will be able to produce energy. And through the biodegeneration and some other scientific considerations as well. And in addition to this, we are also having another pilot project with a member state of the IMO, and this is with AIS integration at the ports. This is also closely related to the single window, where they will be able to have in place monitoring of their vessels, which will also support in one way or another the just-in-time mandate for the vessels that will also, at the end of the day, support the mitigation of energy and support energy efficiency. With what AMA can do to support the initiatives that MTCC Africa has on board, definitely we note that the representation of AMA is member states of the IMO. We have been having a very good value, invaluable value from the member states, and the support has been there. The support has been there in situations whereby MTCC would be working closely with a member state on a certain pilot project. The specific member state may have not ratified MAPOL Annex 6, but due to the development and the progress that they are seeing is being of benefit to the country, then they have had the opportunity to deposit ratification instruments of ratification for the MAPOL Annex 6. So these are positive steps that we are seeing in a very practical manner that are in support of decarbonization. In addition to this, the member states within AMA, we request your support in the ongoing forums, in the committee meetings. It is already noted that there is improved participation. We seek greater participation in this so that we can have the government initiatives from respective member states being brought on board wholesomely that will put the African continent in a very strategic and prominent place. This means that there is need to have cooperation and collaboration. We cannot do it alone at MTCC Africa, so cooperation, collaboration is key. One of the most challenging questions that we get from the member states is, and within Africa we have 42 member states of the IMO, and we have had situations where each and every member state, all the 42 member states, wants to benefit with a pilot project. So the challenge this brings is the financing aspect. We may not have the muscle. IMO is giving its best to bring this on board. So having the cooperation and collaboration, especially from institutions of international financial institutions, the IFIs, and as well as having development partners on board, then we will be able to move the trajectory towards the just and equitable transition. There are various steps that need to be taken, and in the course of the discussions that we will be having, we shall see more on how to make this a strategic advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. We turn to the Director for Marine Environment Management at the Nigeria Maritime Safety Agency, NIMASA, Mr. Jude. Now let's look at issue of stakeholder engagement. How can the shipping industry and maritime administrations best engage with other sectors and stakeholders at the national level to identify opportunities in the decarbonization of shipping? What national authorities can do and what will AMA do?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Harry. I think it's high time that the entire maritime sector realizes that this is for real. Decarbonization is real, and the sector has to wake up to it. I don't know how some of our African brothers look at the matter. it looks like there is still a great deal of skepticism to a certain extent on this matter. But in Nigeria, for example, we have been very conscious of the need to carry stakeholders along all the way. So what have we done? We have set up a national task force. You know, when you hear a task force, I don't know if you appreciate the purport of a task force. A task force means it's a marching order. You have a national task force that comprises various sector players. We have ship owners, we have regulatory agencies, we have private sector, we have all of them. And the idea is to ensure that everybody is carried along. Like IMO says, transition to make sure that nobody is left behind. In the process, one of the things we are working on strongly now, that as a fallout of this task force setting, is shore-based power supply. We've been talking with our MPA, and we have reached advanced stages, because what we are saying to them is, when vessels come into port, at least let us reduce the level of emissions. Let them switch off their power, get solar panels, shore power that is renewable, so that they can plug onto it. Something else we are looking at in the context of engaging stakeholders is a situation where, as vessels approach ports, they slow down. And when they slow down, it means they reduce the fuel that is burnt, and that reduces GHG emissions. In terms of AMA, the role of AMA, we think there is a lot that AMA needs to do. AMA needs to continue to forge collaboration. For example, I'm asking myself, why, for example, will AMA not break into subcommittees, just like we have in IMO and a lot of other organizations? Subcommittee on decarbonization, or subcommittee on, let's call it something, so that regularly they are monitoring implementation in various jurisdictions, because this is important. There is I'm saying this as indicting the African, but there is the typical African attitude, laid-back attitude. He wants to wait until it's nearly time, and that's when he starts to jump. Whereas all along he could have been walking comfortably, but he waits until he has to jump. So AMA has to take that seriously. They have to look for a way to forge a continuous engagement. Continuous engagement, very important, because like they say, if you and the very important thing in this context, where all the stakeholders have to come in, is there's a popular saying that if you walk alone, if you want to walk fast, you walk alone. But if you want to walk far, you walk together. And what do we want to do? We want to walk far. We don't want to walk fast, because this is not a 5-year business. It's not a 10-year business. IMO is talking about 2050. But we are working towards it assiduously. But we should always leave that margin of possible extension, because we are not ready. And that's where IMO needs to play a very strong role. They need to bring African countries together, and like I said, monitor them every step of the way. Africa has to negotiate. When we negotiate, we should be negotiating in blocks, because that way we can collectively negotiate and protect our interests entirely. So these are some of the things I think, these are some of the stakeholder roles I think we need to have, and the roles that AMA can play in this context. Thank you very much.
Distinguished participants, the delegates, I understand you can scan the QR code and download questions or views within there. Similarly, the presenters can do that. We are so pressed for time, so what I would do, I'll just have to give a little brief cap and sum up what are the key themes that keep recurring from this discussion. One of the key takeaways is the issue of ratification of MAPO Annex 6 by member states, because the issue of GHG falls under that aspect at the IMO. I had the issue of the national maritime transport policy or strategy. Countries need to ratify or develop their own national maritime transport policy to make sure they have all their institutions working together. There was the issue of the cost of food security, but the primary thing was the issue of cost. You know, once there's a transport cost or logistic cost, it has some impact on the states. Cooperation among member states, collaboration were another key thing that kept recurring. The issue of renewable energy to be provided was also another key thing that kept recurring. One important thing that came about was the issue of AMA trying to coordinate the views of member states when it comes to the AIMS 2050 strategy, because I understand from broadband intervention is lying there and the views are all disparate, they are not being coordinated. And of course, I've just had the issue of continuous engagement with the whole entire IMO process among the members themselves. You are even advised to set up a national task force, if you may, that could help you in this process. On the issue of challenge, finance was one of the biggest challenges we talked about. They say our needs as member states are varied, but then the money that is available is either doesn't exist or it's so small, so the issue of finance is a challenge. In a nutshell, the major takeaway from this session is what? Working together as a group, and so we all work together, move together, so we move far instead of moving fast and not achieving our goal. With that, I'd like to thank the presenters, the panelists, for your presentation on a very tight time schedule. So if you have questions, drop them into the QR code, and then later on, I'm sure along the way, the panelists will find a way to respond to again, either online or whatnot. We just don't have the time. Thank you so much. Before I go, I see MTCC Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. Just stealing 5 or 2 minutes of the situation before we close. And at MTCC Africa, we are also very keen to ensure that we have women on board in line with what we are entitled to support, looking at this from the capacity building situation for the climate change mitigation and for inclusion to support decarbonization. We note that we have the support of the member states. We highly encourage the member states to encourage the women in the departments within the maritime administrations and the port authorities as well to be a part of the initiatives that we have, because it will add value to the overall goal as well, closely related to the sustainable development goals that we have highlighted. Closely related to this is there is an IMO survey that is closing on the 31st of December that is looking into the participation of women globally and as well in the region. Members in this meeting, I request you to visit us at the booth, the IMO booth outside, and we'll be able to give you a link to the survey and you can fill it in, and it will enable us to progress further in our mission towards decarbonization and the just and equitable transition. Thank you.
Thank you, MTCC Africa, for that information. So, can you give the panelists a hand of applause, please? That's it. You can take your seat. The Master of Ceremony has an announcement for the delegates. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. There's a short announcement. Those IMO-sponsored candidates, participants, please, on your way to lunch, pass through the IMO stand. There will be Purity and somebody from the UNDP, and you will collect an envelope. Thank you.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, after that short announcement, and we're done with the session number 1. Thank you, Dr. Harry Conway and the delegates. We are looking to go to lunch after a heavy tea. Sounds like a good idea, because if we go, we come back at 3:30 and we cover the other 2 sessions thereafter, back to back.